Hello, good morning, good afternoon for everyone on both sides of the Atlantic. My name is Henry. I'm from Clarify, and with me today I have an awesome guest, Luke. I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself in a bit, but I also know that there are a lot of new followers and new visitors today. Probably a lot of that is thanks to you, Luke. So I thought I'll give a brief intro on what Clarify is. So we are a Norwegian software company, and we focus on industrial teams. So on the top layer, it may seem like it is a visualization tool for time series data. However, we're fundamentally built for people to make daily decisions with confidence and add human context to data. And how is that done? By making data available at its simplest format. But today we have a pretty provocative title, calling BS on IIoT marketing, and I guess the ones, it might not be that or it is pretty obvious who's going to be calling the BS and who's going to be on the taking it, as I'm very much on the commercial side of things in my career. But before we go in, let's get a brief intro to you, Luke. Welcome, by the way.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting. Luke Smaul. I'm the founder of a digital transformation consulting firm called Chakra. So we help large industrials navigate through all of the hype and chaos that we're going to talk about today. My background, I'm 20 years now, almost to the day, in the digital transformation or industrial automation space. So I started my career, I hadn't even finished college, and I was working for a system integrator, building panels, wiring PLCs, bolting robots onto the side of old equipment. So I've really grown up in this space and gotten to see the evolution of industrial automation, and then now, as we call it, industrial IoT.
All right, that's an awesome contrast to it. You're 20 years on the actual industry and industrial automation, and then for myself, I'm pretty much 20 years creating hype, and I guess creating that chaos as well. So it's time to be called off. But then again, I always have the big respect for customers. So like when I call out hype, when I hype things, there's good intentions for it. But let's dive into that a bit. But first of all, why is there hype? Why is there hype and chaos?
Yeah, I think the most important thing I try and teach people is the history of digital transformation and where all this hype came from. So we need to rewind to a pretty important milestone around 2007, where a lot of the technologies that we now take for granted really came into being. So we had iPhone being released by Apple, Facebook from a social networks perspective. They left college campuses and went mainstream. AWS launched their first cloud offering, and Hadoop became mainstream, right? So you had big data, mobility, social networks, AI, all really coming into the fore. And that kicked off a seismic level shift in industry. And we saw that play out, that by around about 10 years later, which was predicted by some people, Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz being one of them, his famous article, Software is Eating the World, he predicted that all of those technologies were going to drive this seismic level shift. And those technologies were literally going to eat the world as we knew it. And that became true in 2017, where all the top spots for the highest valuation companies in the world, they left, or the big industrials left those top spots, and they were taken over by the large platform players, right? Apple, Netflix, etc., Amazon. That kicked off what I call the first wave of digital transformation, where if you were an industrial company, you were running scared because you were watching what Uber, for example, was doing to the taxi industry. Most importantly, Uber didn't own any assets, right? They were able to disrupt the market without owning a single asset. So if you're an industrial company, you're running scared. If you're an industrial automation company, you saw this huge opportunity. Those scared people were looking for help. They were looking for direction. So there was an opportunity. And unfortunately, that opportunity led to a huge amount of hype, where everyone tried to sell into this new space being created by that seismic economic level shift.
That's a good intro to the topic of today. And like I've early on in my career, I was selling statistical tools, software tools that they came AI and machine learning and predictive analytics and a lot of hype around that as well. And then on the other side, like today, like we're a growing startup, and I'm trying to hire new people to my team, and literally every day I have to respond to the question of AI, ML, IIoT, all these hype words, and it goes all the way to the recruitment level that the people are looking for jobs in this hype world, and of course for a startup, it's the whole ecosystem is demanding these words, because then that's how you get money, that's how you make yourself seen in the market, that's how you get people, and then some point someone needs to deliver, and someone is buying, and it just goes down over and over and over again, and then we end up in the situation that we're discussing today, that it's not, hype is not always positive, but I can totally see where the hype comes from and why it's done, and I can feel it literally every day, the need to hype things just to survive as a small company in a very competitive market. But going back, let's say I think it was a month ago when we connected, I came to talk to you, and I really enjoyed seeing some proper thought leadership and challenging the market from your end, as you created this anti-marketing guide for IIoT, and I'll put that on the screen in just a bit. But like, what drove you into that? Like, why did you put that out in the world of the internet?
Yeah, well, and that's the key word. It's the internet. This is so. I was at GE. I was at General Electric when Jeff Immelt said he wanted to define and create the industrial internet, and I got to lead some pretty exciting initiatives inside of GE at the time, where we were doing things that required the industrial internet. I think we've lost sight of that phrase, and it's been bundled into the industrial internet of things. Most of what we're doing with industrial IoT has very little to do with the internet, right? Yes, maybe you connect to the cloud. That's not the internet. That's an enabling technology that the internet was born out of. But the internet itself, this idea of openness, of sharing of data and value and information, I don't think really exists today. So I get pretty frustrated when people use the phrase industrial internet. I think honestly, the industrial internet of things has become synonymous now with just with a subset, or probably actually a superset of technology. So I think we've lost that phrase. What I really wanted to hone in on was, what do we mean by the industrial internet? Where did the industrial internet go? What happened to that phrase? If we go back to the seismic economic shift that digital is driving, we need the industrial internet. We need something that the Uber for manufacturing can sit on, and it doesn't exist today. So I created this little pocket guide, you might call it, to call BS a little bit, not so much on just industrial IoT, but really hone in on what do we mean by the industrial internet and why is it missing.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm really, like, we need to call the BS today. That's in the title, so we just can't talk around it. I'm really waiting for, like, that. It can't be a calling a little bit. It really needs to call it in today. But let's get the image in. It'll help our viewers to see what we're referring to as well. So you put in 3 layers to it, and you wrote a bit of a post there looking at the evolution. So could you walk us through?
Yeah, so I started thinking about this idea that if the internet doesn't exist, or if the industrial internet doesn't exist, what do we have today, and how do we call BS on some of the marketing and some of the hype that we're talking about? So I started with, but what are we doing then? What's actually happening? And to clarify, excuse the pun, but to clarify what I mean by the arrows and the sharing of information, I really mean information and value. I don't really care where your data goes. If your data goes to the cloud, but the information and value from that data remains inside the 4 walls of your plant, you haven't switched on the industrial internet. I don't think that's the industrial internet of things. I think that is the industrial network of things. You have networked the things inside of your plant. You're sharing data and information with hopefully the plant manager. You're sharing KPIs, but it's not really unlocking this internet potential, which we all see. So that's really the first layer. So imagine I'm monitoring the plant, I'm monitoring OEE, I've connected probably a machine potentially to the cloud, but the data goes to the cloud, it's processed, but the information and value back from that data stays inside the four walls of the plant. So that's the industrial network of things. And that's where I want to call BS a little bit on if you're marketing into that space and you're talking about the industrial internet, there's nothing internet-y, I need a better phrase than internet-y, but there's nothing internet-y about that. And using the cloud doesn't really count because the information and value stays at the four walls of the plant. So that's the industrial network of things. With me so
the
far?
Great ad. The value. That's like a good definition. The information, the data is in the cloud. The value stays
inside the four walls of the plant. Yep. The next layer is the industrial intranet. So we've moved from the plant level to the enterprise. So maybe you've got 3 facilities across North America. Maybe you've got 300 globally. You've now taken that same OEE number and you're sharing it between the different plants. And you're looking at overall equipment effectiveness for the enterprise. So maybe you're the VP of operations. You manage these 3 plants across North America or these 300 plants globally, whichever it is. The data is going to the cloud and the information is being shared, but it's not this open sharing of data across your supply chain. It's really just inside the 4 walls of your enterprise. So that's where I call this the industrial intranet of things. And we're all familiar with intranets. We've all shared data across the intranet for years, right? We've all gone onto company websites to get certain HR information, et cetera, et cetera. So we're familiar with that. So that was a good phrase for this middle layer, is really the intranet. Still not really get into the internet because the information and value stays inside the 4 walls of the enterprise. Still making sense?
Yes, I'm waiting to pitch clarify and see where do we stand in your opinion. But I'm eager to hear the final stage, the third layer as well.
Great. And then the third layer, where it's really, we've gone from plant to enterprise to supply chain. That's where the industrial intranet has real potential. Now, someone else said to me, this is more like an evolution of Industry 4.0. And I would agree. The top layer is, you could also call that top layer Industry 4.0, where between the supplier, the enterprise, and the consumer or the customer, there is this open sharing of information and value. And it's got to start with the flow of data, which doesn't often exist today. Tesla does a very good job of this on the right-hand side. I can't comment on how well they work with their suppliers from an openness perspective. I imagine it's pretty good for them to do what they do. But it's this openness around information and value sharing at the top layer that switches on the industrial internet of things. And we can even drop the of things, right? If we're kind of going to salute industrial IoT and say, good luck, Godspeed, you now represent a super set of technology. We've lost that phrase forever. So then let's just talk about, well, are we doing the industrial network? Are we doing the industrial intranet? Or are we doing the industrial internet? And which layer do you sit at?
So if I hear you right, the BS is on those organizations that are producing solutions for industrial network, claiming it to be the internet.
Exactly.
All right. I need to reflect a bit because like this is the big picture, and from Clarify's perspective, it's I'll walk it through people. So there is the single player mode where you have information, you have data, you have time series data, and that's your reading and getting data. Okay, the value comes from decisions, better decisions every day. You're one person at that scale. Then you move up, you expand, you become a team. There's 5 people looking at that data. There's 5 people making decisions better. So okay, efficiency improves for the whole company, but also collaboration. You get to tap on the knowledge of other people, the other experts in the field, and we grow from there. We become an organization, we become an enterprise. There's, like you mentioned, there's three factories in North America. There's another 3 here in Norway, and some in Asia. Start sharing the information within the organization, and then even further expanding to the ecosystem. So as an example, we work a lot with fish farmers. Obviously, big industry here in Norway, and that's a really complicated ecosystem because there's living organisms. It's fish. There's algae. There's lice that cause mortality for the fish. Mother Nature is involved every day. Weather is involved, and these locations, they need to communicate each other, learn from each other what's happening in North Norway, South Norway, where they can collaborate, not just send screenshots and not just talk in the coffee table, but actually have human insight, human observations connected to time and data, and that's my pitch on value. And when we extend that outside of the fish pen, the 4 walls, you expand that to ecosystem. There's well boats involved, third-party organizations, supply chain, the slaughterhouse, customers, regulations, researchers, data flows, value flows, and what if I pick from my perspective, value is the human collaboration, the observations, the context related to data, and for me, that's data-driven decision making in all layers. And pardon for my clarify pitch, but I want to hear, like, where am I in your 3 layers with this pitch?
So that's interesting. It sounds like you're almost creating the industrial internet of fish, right?
No, that we've done that. We've done that already past 10 years. Now we're looking to expand beyond fish into into new industries.
Well, the ecosystem approach is really interesting. If you're telling me that there is different suppliers, different enterprises, different consumers, different fish farms, all using the Clarify platform and looking at data collaboratively, you really have hit the sweet spot of that top layer of the industrial internet. That's really impressive, and that is extremely rare. I've done it, right? It's part of a huge project we just finished at Chakra, where we took a large European OEM through this journey and moved the information from their customer sites to a centralized monitoring center. And now there's open sharing of data and information and value between the our customer and their end customers. And they're now able to do things like predict remaining useful life and change out an asset before it fails. And that's been driven by the machine builder. So if that's the kind of use case you're talking about, then yeah, I think huge kudos to Clarify. You get to really use the industrial internet and talk about that. And those use cases are so rare that you guys should be screaming that from the rooftops to let the people know that you've really achieved the industrial internet.
I hope our and I know our marketing team is listening. So that's pretty much a Luke Smaul certified statement that
Certified,
we're able to call ourselves to some extent, and then it's up to the rest of the team to actually deliver those promises as well. But referring back to the example that you shared, where you were able to work in this whole ecosystem, sharing value and information. How did that happen? Like, what did you do differently, or what did everyone involved do differently? What was the enabler to get to actually the internet?
So the most important, one of the most important meetings that happened. So our model at Chakra is we build startups inside large industrial companies. So we had a 25-person incubator that reported into Chakra. Their day job used to be reporting into a big old industrial company. We ran them like a startup team. Very different methodology, very different way of working. But long story short, the most important meeting that happened, we recognized that to get to the industrial intranet level, we needed that openness around data sharing, openness around value sharing and information. So we grabbed the VP of operations from our client's company and said, what's your scoreboard look like? What do you care about when you're manufacturing the machine that ends up in your end customer site? And he showed me his QSTC, I think it is. I always get the acronym mixed up. But his KPI dashboard that looked at safety, quality, cost, delivery, and sustainability in people. And he said, this is how I run my business. Like he's responsible for 3,000 people globally looking after these customers, these end customers. So I said, perfect. That's how you manage your business today under those headings, under those KPIs. Let's grab that dashboard and go meet your counterpart at your end customer site who takes your machinery and uses it on a daily basis to deliver to his or their end customer. So we went and we said, hey, here's how I run my business. Here is my dashboard. Here is my numbers and how I think about safety, quality, delivery, cost, sustainability. How do you run your business? And lo and behold, the end customer who runs those machines to make parts, to sell them, said, oh, I run my business exactly the same. I've got exactly the same dashboard on my shop floor. Great. Now, if we were to start sharing these dashboards back and forth, sharing the impact of if I have a quality issue, do I catch it before it gets to you? But maybe does that impact you on a delivery perspective? If we can have that conversation, one, are you willing to have that conversation? We can do it on, we started the conversation on paper, right? Just getting together once a quarter or once a month and just sharing on a scorecard, hey, here's how both our businesses are running. Here's where an impact could hit you. And then we translated that into real dashboards, real data, real information going back and forth between the two. And the most critical part of that conversation was, hey, I'm going to start doing things differently to improve my dashboard. If I do things differently, can we have a conversation around how our contract changes? The contract at the time was we buy the machine for dollars, and then we buy service contracts based on parts and labor. If we get to a level of partnership, a level of openness around data sharing, could we change that contract where maybe you stop buying parts and labor and we give you a performance-based contract? Let's start there, right? Can I start to guarantee some of these metrics? Can I start to guarantee quality? Can I start to guarantee uptime? And if I can, and that works, can we then maybe stop ever selling you equipment? You no longer have to buy equipment for dollars. We'll just guarantee this particular piece of equipment. Let's say it produces, I don't know, vacuum. Let's use that as kind of the output of that machine. Don't buy the machine anymore. Buy the output of that machine, and we will continue this conversation. And the VP of operations on the end customer side said, yeah, that's a journey I want to go on. And it all started by just showing both parties how common it was how to manage their business and having this openness of data sharing back and forth.
Great example. And I mean, that's like the returns are very clear, and that's where innovation starts to happen when two big players work together towards a common goal. But also what I pick up on that is there's culture involved. Like there was enough ability to share the data, but there was also will to share the data, and that's culture that needs to exist in organizations if they're looking to innovate and create new ways, new revenue models, or new saving models involving others than just your own organization. And if I reflect back on that, on our perspective, like a lot of what we do is built from bottom up. So we believe in the people in the field. We want to equip them with the tools they need and what they want to use, and with the data that's relevant for them, because the person on the field looks at different data than the management, and we want to drive that change from bottom up, but the principles are very similar. It requires a culture to wanting to improve. It requires a culture to wanting to share data with your colleague, the guy who or lady who comes to the next shift, to the afternoon shift after the morning shift. You share that data together, and you make decisions together, and you log them in one place. And that culture builds up little by little into innovation in the factory field, if we use fine words. But the better daily decisions is quite simple as well. So we are on a mission to take the discussions that happen on the coffee table in one location to the cloud, so that everyone can learn and unlock that tacit knowledge within organizations. But key aspects that I picked up from your story is culture and willing to change. That those are requirements if you want to move forward.
It's so true. And that's what we teach people. And if you can read the poster behind me, we tell companies on a daily basis, this is not about technology. The example I gave, we launched a whole new business model globally for a multi-billion-dollar business without spending any money. I think we spent like $3,000 on a MATLAB license at one point, but without spending any money on technology. And you'll appreciate this because you're trying to fill this white space. But the way we did it, we found a process engineer who had taught themselves Python. They were using process data to look at remaining useful life. How long will this particular asset last for before it catastrophically fails or even degrades? They were working with the domain experts on site and in their remanufacturing sites to look at pumps or look at assets when they came in and say, oh, when I looked at the data and I saw this failure mode, I can now go look at this asset in remanufacturing, and the person that tears it down to then rebuild it and send it back, hence remanufacturing, I can sit with them and we can actually look at the physical asset and see, does it work? And we pinpointed that as really the superpower of this company and said, we can take that to market. And we took it to market with legacy technology. This was a SQL.NET based SCADA system that sat on the customer site. We did an extraction from the SQL database. The customer emailed it to us. We call that file transfer protocol just because it sounded better than email. They emailed it to us. We loaded that same database in a centralized version of the same SCADA system, very, very basic. That gave us the context back again. And then they ran either MATLAB or Python analytics against it. And they were able to predict remaining useful life for that information. Very, very basic technology. But the key was that the culture shift that enabled to drive, because that sharing of data between the client and end customer didn't exist before. And then to your point, that process engineer being identified as a kind of a cultural change agent who said, I'm going to teach myself Python. I think there's more I can be doing here. And then most importantly, as I understand it, this is Clarify's value prop. When they saw something in the data, they physically walked into the remanufacturing plant, grabbed the asset, grabbed the reliability engineer working on it, and had that conversation. But I could imagine that whole chain being automated on top of Clarify, right? If I understand it
Yes,
correctly.
if not, like let's put the automated into the future. But instead of walking to that person, they could have logged it. This finding in Clarify. Other colleagues could have seen it, and management would have been appreciative to that finding. And that individual who was the initiator of large innovation or small innovation or whatever size of founding gets the appreciation they need for the work they do, and their people in the center of everything. So that's what we're here for, to have that chance for people to be creative and innovative in their job when it relates to industrial data, and sharing that. Like talking to people is obviously always awesome, but we want those discussions to always also happen inside the tool, because you don't always have the opportunity to, at least especially in these days, to physically go there. Remote remote work and sharing these comments through mobile apps and so is really it's here today, and it's here in the future as well.
Oh, and I see it. It's one of. I remember sitting with this process engineer, and he became our head of data science. He was kind of promoted on the job into this much bigger role. He became head of data science, and I remember sitting with him. We were in Taiwan at this very important customer meeting, or we were there for a very important customer meeting. And I remember pulling him aside. I grabbed him and I grabbed the VP of operations, and I basically said, we should give this guy a blank check. I said, whatever he needs, we're here as a group in Taiwan launching a business model for this multi-billion-dollar OEM based on their work, based on this chap's work. And the two things he talked about needing was, I think, there was this infamous $3,000 MATLAB license, which was just seemed like such a no-brainer. It was like, yes, we can get you $3,000 for a MATLAB license. But then he talked about, how do I streamline collaboration with subject matter experts around the organization? That's what I need to do. To your point, it can't be me for the rest of this. We're now launching this whole business unit around this. I can't just be walking from plant to plant, from asset to asset, from failure mode to failure mode, and trying to grab the person and have a conversation. We need a way for that to be more digitally enabled. And that's why I totally get what you guys are trying to do at Clarify, because just that idea of someone else logging in, seeing, oh, here's a pattern in the data we haven't seen before. Can you please tell me what you saw in remanufacturing when you tore this particular asset down? And the person can comment in. That is hugely valuable, absolutely hugely valuable.
The solution is so easy. Just give me a call or write in the chat in LinkedIn, and we'll solve that latter part.
Yeah, I'll make sure I make the connection back.
All right. No, thanks. I think time is running. Great stories, great insight, and I would say we did get the BS calling out in a very politically correct manner. So thank you for that, Luke, as well. And by the way, we're still have time for both of us. I know. So if there's any questions coming from the audience, feel free to write in the chat or connect with myself or Luke in LinkedIn or any other method as well. It's been a great chat. I do want to hype up a bit of our future programs in Clarify. The second day of February, me and our co-founder and CTO Turinga will be talking about how to develop data-driven culture in industrial ecosystems. So that's a live stream session focused specifically for system integrators who are we looking to grow with in the near future with our partner program, but obviously any members of the industrial ecosystem from all layers are very welcome to join us and listen on some aspects of how to develop a data-driven culture. And it's not a shocker, but the people will also be in the center of that. Not that much of technology. But before we end it today, any last remarks from you, Luke?
No, I think let's get back and start talking. Let's, like I said, kind of salute industrial IoT and let that go into the ages as the definition for that super set of technology. But let's get back and talk about the industrial internet. What does that mean? And what are the use cases like you brought up that are out there that can be demonstrated so people can start to get back to thinking much bigger picture around the potential of this technology?
Definitely, and let's pay attention more into value, and let's pay more attention into outcomes. So that's definitely something I've taken as a reminder from hearing you talking right in the internet, that it's always necessary to keep the outcomes in mind, and that's how businesses grow, and that's how customers get value when there's people who genuinely want to help them further, not just because of the hype, but because we care. All right, that's it. Is getting late on this side of the Atlantic, and I know that it's early for you over there. So I'll wish you a great